showing up. Today is going to be an interesting day. Presentations from the second year candidacy group. For those, well, everybody here knows me, but for the video, my name is Tom Ashcraft. I'm the director of the MFA program. The second year candidacy talks and the candidacy show are part of the requirement for the MFA program. That's a milestone step into these folks last year. We have one interloper here that we're proud to have with us, Meredith Grissom, who will be speaking. So we have Elijah Cormier and Sansoy. They won't be here today, but their work will be shown, and there'll be a recorded narration. And so really proud of these folks. This also follows, or is usually in conjunction with the exhibition. The exhibition this year was at Revolve. Thank you, Colton Caldwell, for your support and letting us show there all these years. We really appreciate it. Typically the talk goes in conjunction with the show. These folks are very busy. They're going around the country, going to conferences, exhibiting. So that's why we're doing it late in the semester. In any event, please join me in welcoming these folks, and we're going to start off with a recording from Elijah. Right, thank you. That's it.
There is a little bit of a lag when I hit so bear with me.
Presented with information that conflicts with that, we're forced to fill in the holes with the language that we know. In world events and cultures and others and in ourselves, we see what we want to see. And for a long time, I tried to exploit this discordance, this mistranslation, by making works made to disgust or disturb, but never quite hit the mark. My art has always been slightly enigmatic, not believing it was worth it to convey the full story to the public, but these were just too off. Part of the issue is I'm simply not an object maker. I needed to get out of aiming for a solitary piece to have any influence, and instead focus on more immersive experiences, often using particular lighting and object together to make singular installations. This led me into working with projections. There's an appeal to having work the viewer can physically walk into and be a part of. And while there's still some hidden information, we've bridged that gap and allowed the viewer to have their own connection to the piece instead of showing them my relationship and asking them to understand it. This led into video work as well. I felt as though there was so much I could say of a stagnant object, so I moved into conveying whole storylines. I feel like these works can speak for themselves almost as a visual artist statement, but for times when I do still need to write something down, trust me, I'm gonna write it. I've always done some type of text work, but only recently have I learned to appreciate physicality and performance that large-scale writings can afford me. However, there is still the issue of translation. And there's language that I, Elijah, just simply don't use. And for a while I produced work under a pseudonym to allow me to use the language of others and attempt to rid my body of work of my body, to present it as wholly outside of myself. But that disingenuous, right? It's not honest. So I instead decided to cut myself in two, create two separate artists, both housed inside myself. This allowed me to not only explore different styles of art, but different processes of making. One is angry, sorrowful, and fast. She uses a common lexicon to get more in your face. It's bright colors and it's blunt. Her work comes from deep emotional strife. It's almost unfinished, like storming off in the middle of an argument so the other person doesn't see you crying. It's the art that I need to make. I, on the other hand, am a little bit more chill. It's relaxed, but not exactly calm. It's that funny friend that you realize you don't actually know anything about. It's a charming book, but there's some pages missing. The work is dry and recedes into itself. It's the art that I want to make. You'll notice I went from object to video and then back to objects. And that's because one of the issues I didn't mention earlier was materiality. I always loved multimedia sculpture, but could never seem to find the right medium for it. But if we're going for honesty, why use materials I have no relationship with? I grew up on farms, why use walnut when I can use old pallets? I worked in retail and nonprofits, why try handmade paper when I can just steal some from the copier like I always do? And even though I'm using my own language, redefining what a sketch or even what a portrait is for my own uses, I already have a relationship with material. We speak a common tongue. By using what's already around me, each piece starts from a place of honesty. So after this, we'll talk about problem solutions. We'll end on two problems that I'm currently working on. The first is my use of nature. It's always been a part of my work. I love bringing nature inside, especially if it dirties up the place. But it's only recently come to my attention that not everyone has that relationship. And so I wonder if I need to really address it at all. Nature is natural, and I've been around it my whole life. It's in my work naturally. Finally, my last problem is that in art and in life, I've been looking for breath. Pieces where the viewer and myself can just be. Where you can sit and be with the work and just meditate in it. Where time stops and you can finally take a breath. It's not a problem, but I think it's the answer.
Okay, and now I have the pleasure of introducing Meredith.
Good morning. It's still morning, isn't it? Yeah, good. All right, well, I am Meredith, and I am the MFA program's imposter. I'm about to graduate with my master's in teaching with a concentration in art education. But this year, I had the good fortune of being adopted by the MFA cohort. And so I'm so grateful to have had these opportunities to participate in the Candidacy show and these art talks. And so before I dive in deep to all about me and my work, I want to take a second and thank everybody. I want to thank the cohort. I am so deeply impressed by you guys and your work. And just you as human beings, I think you're wonderful. And I need to give a special shout out to Lynne and Holly and Brooklin and Reese and Elijah. Thank you for always being so inclusive and for helping me tag along on this journey. It has meant so much. And then lastly, I can get through this without crying. Okay. I need to thank Tom and Susan. Thank you for believing in me and taking a chance on me, and for always being so encouraging and at the same time challenging me. I appreciate you both so much. And I have made memories this year that I can take with me through life. This has been a truly wonderful experience. Okay, so I don't get choked up. Let's talk about art. My first year of graduate school was largely online education classes. Well, that's where I learned all the little nuggets of knowledge that I needed to know to be successful as a teacher and to prepare me for my internship at Brevard High School. That was an enlightening experience. And that took up all of my second year of graduate school. But just looking at these pictures, these kids are really hardcore. And I think that they have prepared me well. I teach at Blue Ridge Community College, and I'm going to be teaching art appreciation this fall, and I'm going to have some high school students in that class. So I'm feeling good about it. I'm feeling prepared. I have survived a whole year teaching high school. I can survive teaching a few of them in my college classes too. But we've got a little example of everything here. We got some pictures of the kiddos working, some AP art with wood burning, some oil pastel resist from Art 1, some pen and ink, 2-point perspectives, some printmaking, some painting. They taught me a lot. They really did. And I don't want to bore you guys too much with teaching philosophies and educational theories, but there's one that really has resonated with me throughout my graduate career, and that has been constructivism. And constructivism really emphasizes learning through experience. Welcome to art. You live and you learn. And I truly think that that's where the magic happens. And just as an example, I teach a very beginner level color theory class, and I can tell them all day long, you mix blue and yellow together and you are gonna get green. I can show them, hey look, I mixed blue and yellow together and I got green. But when you actually do it for yourselves, when they are mixing those colors themselves, they're creating an experience and they make green, and that's where the magic happens, this magical understanding. Now, learning through experience also opens the door for experimentation, and that opens the door for trial and error and mistakes. And so I have found that through the books and through living and learning and through my wonderful teachers over my graduate studies, that when I'm teaching, I think it's going to be very important to create an environment where the students feel safe enough to make mistakes, to experiment. Don't worry about getting it wrong. Just keep going, just keep trying, because I think that that's where the magic happens. That's where we learn and then we feel safe, and that's so crucial. Now, here we are in my last year of graduate school, and I'm so excited. I've been exploring photography this year, and the major themes in my work have always been family, empathy, and connection. And y'all, I'm a busy girl. I get burnt out, I get tired, I'm always on the run, and art gives me a space where I'm allowed to slow down, where I'm allowed to heal, to explore these concepts, and it makes me feel so good. It's good for my soul. And so this is the piece that I included in the Candidacy show. We affectionately call this My Big Giant Head. But the real title is The Joys of Those I Love. So last semester, I created this work, which is archival inkjet prints and silver gelatin prints. And I observed each of the members of my family and really tried to pay attention to their physical attributes, their personality quirks, their preferences, and most importantly, their sense of play. And when I observed their sense of play, that's where something happened that I didn't expect. I thought play was going to be, silly, and a bunch of smiles and giggles and goofiness. And sometimes it is. There are a few places where you can see that that does happen. But I also saw that when my family plays, there is a lot of concentration involved. And sometimes it's very serious, and they're contemplating, and you really see those wheels turning as they focus on the things that they enjoy. So that took me by surprise. Another thing that took me by surprise is that I was so caught up in focusing on the details of each person that I really didn't think about them as a unit. And so when I began to put these pictures together, there was this emergence of like a connectivity, a materialization was a beautiful surprise that I did not intend. Now, let's look at a few details of that. What you don't know about this work, and what you don't see, is that when I initially set out to create this work, I left out the cat. And guys, I have been living with this cat longer than I have lived with my husband. And I felt awful that I left her out. And so, over break, I really sat with this feeling and tried to figure out, why am I so upset by this? I mean, she's family, but it's an animal. And I just felt terrible. So I sat with it and then rolled it over in my brain. And she's a cat from the cat distribution system. Are any of you guys familiar with that term, cat distribution system? A few of you, quite a few of you, all right. So for those of you who are not familiar with that term, the cat distribution system was a term coined on social media. I think it was TikTok. And it is used to describe the random, often spontaneous way that cats appear in people's lives, especially when you come across a stray cat and you adopt it and take it home with you, like these guys did with me. So, in other words, what happens is that when the powers that be declare that you are worthy, you are presented a cat out of nowhere. It could be a kitten, it could be a full-grown cat, but it's there and it's there for you. The cat chooses you, you don't choose the cat. Now, I have a lot of questions about the cat distribution system. A lot of questions. I still have a lot of questions. But I did some research, and PETA says, hey, hit the brakes. This is not funny. This is a serious matter. It's about an overpopulation of cats. And I said, okay, you know, I get that. I see stray cats. I have been a lifelong member of the cat distribution system. I do not know a time without having a cat. And so I did a little more research, dug a little deeper, and I said, well, you know, how many cats are there in the world? I'm just curious. And there are a lot. There are about 600 million cats estimated in the world. And that's not big cats like lions and tigers. That's like what we would consider a domestic cat. Now, I'm not one of these people who pits cat people against dog people. I would cuddle a crocodile if the opportunity presented itself and it wouldn't eat me. But I was curious, so I kept digging. And I found that there are, you ready for it? 900 million dogs in the world. That is 300 million more dogs than there are cats. But cats are the problem. So many questions. So many questions. So to try to wrap my head around this, I did a few exercises and made a couple of collections to try to reflect on my experiences and really understand this topic. So these are sketches. This is called the Cat Distribution System Scratching the Archive. I drew these from memory. Now, I'm not a crazy cat lady. I don't have all these cats right now. But these are the cats of my past and present. I only have these last two. But I wanted to remember everything that I could about how did they look, what were their names, anything about their personality that I could remember. I jotted it down in these sketches, and they're done with watercolor and ink. The other work is photography. And this is where I dug through the family archives. Now, this is called 9 Lives. The reason it's called 9 Lives is because I could only find 9 cats. I know that there were at least 12, but I could only find photographic evidence of 9. And so I wanted this to kind of mirror the work that I had had in the Candidacy show to help guide me as I process this information. And I wanted it to have an organic shape, and now that I see it blown up giant size, it kind of looks like a map. But, you know, as time goes on, you know, I couldn't find photographs of the very first cats that I had. But I have a lot of photographs of the cats that I have now, and I got to take some this semester. And this really helped me kind of immerse myself, not only in my experiences, but also with the medium, and figure out what am I going to do with photography and the cat distribution system. And this is a much bigger project than I anticipated it being. This could go on for years, because I have so many questions, and I'm so interested. But my most recent work is this. This is the cat distribution system on tap. And this is done with archival inkjet prints and glitter paper. I cut out the cats from the photos and replaced them with glitter paper, and then paired them with a product. So I don't want to give you too much information about what this is about and my thoughts behind it, because I want you to interpret it on your own. But I mean, it's very clearly is about making connections. It's about cats, and from the distribution system by the title. And it's about products. And so, look at some detailed shots of that. There are several ways you could interpret it. You could interpret it in a lighthearted way and say that, oh, well, this is representations of beings with products and animals that get them through the day, you know? I gotta have my cat cuddles and I gotta have my honey buns. These are things that I use throughout the day, or that I am deeply intertwined with. Or you could look at it from a darker perspective and say, well, this is making connections between human irresponsibility concerning distribution systems and overproduction. So there are lots of ways you could look at this, and I want you to do that. I want to keep it weird so that you can do that. And I'm not completely done with this project. Almost, right, Tom? Almost. And I'm working with size now, enlarging the photos and making my own glitter paper. But in the future, I do want to expand this work with the cat distribution system and reach out to other people and hear their stories and find ways to connect that into my artwork. So if you too have been victimized by an uncooperative yet adorable ball of fluff from the cat distribution system, I look forward to talking with you. Does anybody have any questions for me before I pass the torch? No? Oh, well, thank you again for this awesome experience. I would like to introduce you to my good friend, Lynne.
We have one technical thing we're gonna work on for a second. Okay. Can you still hear me in the back? Okay, thank you, yeah. Hi y'all, I'm Lynne, and I am a multidisciplinary artist. And what I'm gonna do today is share my journey as an artist, exploring the power of line and marks. First, I think it's important to have a small glimpse of who I am outside of the studio. I come from a very active family. We have friends that we've had for life that we love playing games, we love being outside. I'm also a writer, and as you can tell from some of the photos, my family and I love our dogs. So we do have cats, so I'm not just a dog person. This is a version of my undergrad, what I call my undergrad work. It's paintings that I created for class, but also paintings that I did on my own. And I took a deep dive in looking at portraiture, both drawing and painting. That was kind of a personal project that I did, and that was important in what's coming. I am a person who's inspired by pretty much any artist I meet, which makes it a little challenging sometimes because I'm like a squirrel. But some of the heavy hitters that continue to come back are Philip Barlow, Sally Mann, Agnes Martin, Cy Twombly, and Martin Perrier. At the moment, I'm also really interested in alternative ways of using the whole body to make the marks in mark making. And these are examples with Helen Frankenthaler, Anselm Kiefer, Tara Greer is on the ladder, and Bryce Martin. That really resonates with the work that I'm doing right now. My first year here, one of the projects that I had in my very messy studio was mark making, and it was a daily project. I made something every day during the whole first year here, and it's really interesting to me now. I had a couple people say to me at the final critique, what you're gonna do is in, because I created a book, and they're like, what you're gonna do is in this book. And I didn't quite get it then, but I totally get it now. I also took ceramics as one of my studios. I had printmaking and sculpture that first semester and second semester as well. We did mold making with porcelain slip. I have a deep respect for materials, which sometimes gets in my way because I'm so respectful of it, I forget to play and experiment. And this helped me in the ceramics with the porcelain slip. It also reminded me here that I have such a love, I guess, where I'm really interested in the forms from the natural world. And that was kind of a reminder that I needed that came out of that work. And also I did slip dip figures. Those in the right-hand side are not fired, but I still loved the texture and materiality that came from that, as well as the cast paper objects that are there. And then you can see where I'm starting to combine printmaking and photography and painting. Summer research was all about paper. I did hand paper making, which is kind of like returning to a first love for me. Specifically, I was working on three-dimensional works and looking at different pulp recipes. It's surprisingly hard to find the right forms and the right types of pulp to make good 3D forms. And it was kind of my research in both working with contemporary paper artists and talking to them, doing research, but then also actually doing the making. That led to this semester, this year, not this semester, in the fall with sheet casting. That turned out to be my favorite form of paper casting. And found objects have always been important to me, and that came into my work with a found object, this rocking chair, and casting that, which will show up in the future work that you will see. I also took a photography studio, which was another, like, coming back to another love. And I spent a lot of time looking at grid systems, looking at layers, both digitally and in physical materials. And this is also, I showed the picture on the wall because it was sort of a beginning for me of using that wall space as a place to play and experiment and mix materials and work with the different materials. This is one of the pieces that's the digital layers. It is part of the Emergence exhibition with Susan Martin as my mentor. And you all have 3 more days to go see that exhibit. So I also use the photographs, especially from the fall semester, in my artist books. This is an unbound book that I had at the end of the semester, and then I made the case binding for that book. It is dealing with recording, place, and time, dealing with questions around home and place and people. And then I also have, I should have brought it, I have this tiny little wooden book that fits in the palm of my hand, which does not look tiny in these slides. It is a pure celebration of trees. I take thousands of photographs of trees, and I was sort of thinking, well, what am I gonna do with all these photographs? And I wanted to make this homage to trees. It's also an exploration of the materials that make up the book and the piece. The wood was gifted to me. I used beeswax on all the pages. There's handmade paper in there. My photographs are on there, printed on handmade paper, tea bags, and different other papers. But just, it's that exploration of materials to help me tell the story that I want to tell. So spring semester, I'm back to photography and starting to incorporate drawings even more, finding a way to combine those marks and again, exploring materials. I'm adding fiber into the mix even more, and also playing with scale. I showed this slide. This is the pool on the right. It's a very cheap kiddie pool. And that was part of my summer research where I'm making the handmade paper, and I put flax in the pool to see what would happen if I left it out in the rain, tried to make it and see. And then it's the iterations of how I'm using it. I tried it in a painting. That painting was not successful. So then I tore it off of the painting and I ended up using it again. It's kind of a return to the importance of objects for me. Those same pieces are what's behind the organza on this piece. And while I don't think it's important for anyone watching and seeing this work to know what the history is as far as the painting, I do think it's important that there is a history and that you have that sense of that history with what's behind it, even if you don't know what it is. So this is part of the Candidacy show. The work on the left is the accordion books that I created. It's again, back to that daily mark making for me, but I also was interested in looking at those books as more sculptural objects, and that's more coming from the play on the wall that I was talking about with the different materials. And then the piece on the right is, for me, at the time, the largest piece that I ever created, and that is the combination of drawing, photography, and then the cast chair found a place in there as well. This was the other side of my part of the Candidacy show with the different photographs. I'm looking at fragmentation, layering, looking at an alternative view. These are pretty mundane objects. I have a weed, I have a piece of old machinery, I have branches, a tombstone, like not the most exciting objects to see, but I want people to think about those things that we pass by every minute, that there might be something worth looking at again, and that it could be unexpected. This is a work in progress. This is work that I've done since the Candidacy show. It is from a photo shoot that I did in Asheville. And again, it's the digital layering, and this time I'm also exploring with and using encaustic with that material. And again, material, always material. One of the questions that came up this semester was, I have these marks that I'm making in the books, and they're pretty contained and they're pretty small. What would happen if I enlarged that? What would happen if I played with scale? And for me, the question was, can I still access that same sense of play, that same experimentation, that feedback that I get from the paper when I'm doing that? Can I do that if I'm at a larger scale? And the answer was, yeah. These are the mid-range drawings, is what I'm calling them. They're about 24 by 36 inches. Some of the lines are starting to change that you can see, but I also have some organic forms that are starting to come out and repeat themselves while I'm working. And then next is the larger scale, so the piece that was in the show. And what I did, there are 6 pieces, about 7 now. And I'm really interested in the tension that's happening between kind of the chaos, and for me, the chaos in the background, but then also the balance of those more organic shapes and potentially more calm shapes. It's still working on paper. Working on paper is important to me, I think because I'm a hand paper maker. Even though I didn't create that paper, that's next. But just, it's exploring different materials, different tools. So these are still more pieces. This is me grappling with photography again, found objects in my studio. I am finding that because I like found objects, it doesn't have to be a found object off the street. It can be a found object in my own studio. And so that's what happened with the ore on the right-hand side. That was a cast paper object that then I added because it wanted to be there. And this is just a detail shot of sort of the closer, if I can get someone to get closer to these pieces, there are pretty, to me, incredible moments with those lines and the interaction with what's going on. The direction I'm going, I want to continue with photography. I'm still finding that inspiration between place and time. Definitely continuing with drawing. I will always be interested in a line, not a straight line, but a line. And finding that inspiration from place wherever I am, whether it's here, whether it's back at home in the East Coast. Just finding the tension between who I am, where I am, and what's happening. And also, this is also to show the materials. This is a baby quilt that I took. I mixed it with porcelain slip and paper and gesso, and then covered it with all kinds of other tea stains and things like that. This summer, I'm also going to experiment and take a deep dive in fiber, and I'm including paper making in that. I'm going to work with felting and paper making, and it's kind of interesting because there's a real difference between the scale, interesting to me. The felt is going to be tiny and very controlled and precise, and then the paper is going to be large and completely out of control. So it's going to be interesting to see how they work together. And I wanted to end by saying thank you. I initially started listing all the individual faculty members that I wanted to thank, and it's pretty much the whole department, so I'm going to say thank you to everyone. You have each, everyone sitting here actually today, you have each made an impact on my life and my art, and I'm grateful for it, so thank you. And now I get to introduce Hey y'all, I'm Brooklyn. Can you hear me okay in the back? Okay, cool. So before we talk about my work, I'm going to talk a little bit about me. I grew up in the mountains of Kentucky. Before I was an artist, I was a scientist in training. As a kid, I was fascinated with the natural world. It was my safe haven from the chaos that we called civilization. And when things got hard for me, I'd escape outside and use nature to help me understand and cope with what was going on. So that followed me into my art making. During my undergrad, I worked with photo and natural materials to try to process what happened to my brain as I had gone through traumatic events. And that led to this piece titled Remnants. So many of my memories were destroyed by my brain in an attempt to keep me safe from the trauma. With Remnants, I was able to portray the tangle that my mind had become from those events. And that kind of brings me to now, or to my time in grad school. The next couple of images that I show are from the spring semester of last year. Coming in, I knew I wanted to continue the discussion of trauma and its effect on a person. So in my second semester here, I finally found my footing and started experimenting in layering and obscuring. I was starting to get the hang of it, but was struggling with figuring out how much to reveal. During this time, I was also playing with scale and projection. And after a particularly late night trying to figure out the projections, I tried physically inserting myself into one. So this was a breakthrough for me. The text, there was something about it that spoke to me. This was my favorite image that I made that semester. But then summer came, I was burnt out from all of the late nights tweaking the projections, and I was missing incorporating the natural world into my work. So during the summer, this past summer, I got a grant to conduct research on pigments that could be sourced from local flora. I needed to find my way back outside, and there's a little bit more about this later on. But note that because of this, momentum from that semester, that spring semester, was lost. That brings me to fall 2024. I started out the semester thinking, oh, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna shoot, I'm gonna do so much, and then it became the hardest semester I'd ever been through, even as a college freshman going through COVID. So I lost all momentum after Helene hit. It completely shook me, and I needed something comforting. So I started making postcards using images from my childhood. I gave the cards to family members to write memories on and send back to me. A precursor of what's to come is the result of that. It's not my most successful work, but it was needed at the time. So that brings me back to this image. After finishing Precursor, I knew something was missing. I kept coming back to this image over and over, trying to figure out why it was so compelling to me. It was still something about that text. My pieces need text, or at least my photographic pieces do. And so it was something for the audience to grab onto and recognize. So I decided to use the postcards from Precursor and layer memories written on them. So these include the writings from my family members as well as writings from my journals. I found a new way of working. I started making conscious decisions on what to reveal to the viewer. And that brings us to the present. I'm now taking images from my childhood, writings from my journals and from family, and combining them to discuss childhood trauma and its impact on people. As my digital photo body of work has been developing, I've also been working on a ceramic body of work. These two projects inform each other, but aren't meant to be of the same body. So, sometimes poison is the cure draws parallels between trauma and the land brought on through human intervention,
and the trauma humans go through thanks to each other in society. For these mountainous porcelain forms, I form them, fire them to conform, coat them in cyanotype, arrange forged materials over the forms, and expose them to sunlight. Because of the nature of porcelain and its fragility, it often cracks during firing. Most would view this as failure, but I highlight it and make it beautiful, highlighting the flaws using inks that I made over the summer from poisonous plants. Going forward, I will be continuing these two bodies, letting them inform each other, letting them inform me to give me words to better discuss my conceptual themes. In my digital photos, I am beginning to play with some symbolism to help communicate meaning to the viewer, and in my porcelain pieces, I'm starting to incorporate drawings and text to push them further. So, sorry about that. That is all I have today. Does anybody have any questions? Cool. And it is my pleasure to introduce Holly.
Hi, my name is Holly Hill. I'm a second-year Candidacy student, and I just want to thank all of you for coming today. I really appreciate you being here. I know that we all do. If you're familiar with improv, there's a rule called yes and. Does anybody know this rule? Okay. The rule suggests an improviser should always accept what their scene partner has stated and expand on it. I would like to share with you how my cohort, faculty, staff, and professors have been my yes and. But let me share a few things with you first. Origin story. If we go in the Wayback Machine, I received my undergraduate degree in 1994 from Texas A&M University in liberal arts. That's not an oxymoron. With a major in costume technology and design. I've worked as a costume designer roughly for 25 years in theater, film, and television. I did take some other paths along the way. However, I always seem to come back to the act of making. I've always been a maker. After a brain tumor in 2011, I knew that I would be unable to do the de rigueur 14-hour day on set anymore. So I pivoted and I purchased a custom-made costume house with my business partner at the time called Costume Co-op. This allowed me to design and create in a more 9-to-5 manner, and I excuse me, did this for about 7 years. After a major industry strike and the onset of COVID, I knew the industry would be changing, and not in a good way. And I was very ready to leave Los Angeles. I sold my part of the business, and I went to live on a farm near Robbinsville here in North Carolina, like you do when there's a pandemic. During COVID, I just kept making, and I knew I needed to keep doing this. I applied to the School of Art and Design MFA program and was accepted in the fall of 2023. Fools. My first year was interlaced with 2 outside projects I had committed to before applying to the program. Macbeth, a rock musical at Seattle People's Theater in the fall, and the Children's Museum of the Desert role-playing exhibit in the spring. So how would this work? Tom Ashcraft said to me, his famous words, "Work makes work. You can make it happen." These 2 projects actually went hand in hand with the textile and material exploration that I was being asked to do as a first-year student. Materials and techniques used in both projects have found their way formally into my practice. This was my first piece for my first semester crit, created from the material that I used to create Lady Macbeth's dress from the musical in Seattle. That semester, I really dug in with textiles and exploring how materials work together. In the spring, I set foot for the first time in ceramic studio. I actually tried to get out of the class, but Heather said no. And she said, I got your back. I'll see you in class. And she did have me. By the end of the semester, I knew parts of this medium would find a place in my practice permanently. Mold making opened up a new world for me, and out of which came Sister Totems. In spring of 2024, I received a Wingate Fellowship to Airmont Craft College in Tennessee to study eco-printing. I spent 2 weeks learning about eco-dyeing, printing with natural fibers, and unfortunately, there was math, but I made it through. We studied both manual and stitch-resist shibori methods and printing techniques unique to natural dye. I knew this knowledge was going to elevate my practice going forward, and you'll see it throughout my work over the last 2 semesters. That summer, I also received a research assistantship from WCU. The proposal title was Nuclear Milk. The inspiration for this stemmed from my time spent on the farm near Robbinsville in 2020, where I was surprised to learn about the proximity and prevalence of nuclear power plants in this region. My hope is nuclear milk will shed light on this energy source with a bit of humor and encourage ongoing dialogue about energy in the future. This is still a work in progress and will be stitched together much like a quilt. And these are my pattern pieces laid out on the wall ready to go. There are 672 of them, so wish me luck. I went back into the ceramic studio in the fall. Me, Heather May, I would like to cover textiles and slip and then fire them. Can I do that? Heather May, yes, write a proposal. Heather's really big on proposals. Out of that exploration came found fossils, doilies, actually. Revered, reviled, I wanted a chance to reconceive these little pieces of art with no name or provenance floating around in the world. Unlike quilts and other large textiles that are typically treated as important or heirlooms, doilies are generally thought of as impractical dust collectors. I would like to argue that if you stop and look, you can see the dignity and beauty in the makers' lives. I think of these pieces as fabric fossils that might have a different life and story to tell through clay. Maybe a different generation can look at these intricates and see something new. I also focused on surface design using, utilizing 1940s deconstructed military coat pieces. These pieces may look very delicate on the wall, but the materials have been through incredible physical manipulation, harsh chemical environments, extreme temperatures, beaten, stomped, tied, knotted, tangled, pierced with needles, and it still remains strong. This is just simply awesome to me. I'm always moved by the metaphorical capabilities of fiber as an artistic medium. Our interaction with textiles is the longest sustained physical relationship we have in our lives. Other than our own body, it's the only material that will always accompany us through life, either disposable or sacred. From the day we're born to the day we die, we're wrapped in fiber. I don't think any other medium has that level of intimacy. Appalachian Magic is a collaboration with Parks Felton, undergraduate in graphic design. Shoes have long been used in Appalachian tradition. Waves brought to this country by European immigrants, often found with photos of salt, beans, manure tucked down into the toes or planted under the soles. Sometimes tossed into the trees or telephone lines to ward off evil spirits. Marks of physical territory to guard against evils and sicknesses. As we clean up and reconnoiter after Hurricane Helene and see shoes sort of in the wild, I wonder if those shoes washed away can still hold the magic of the wearer. Can they still conjure, protect, and hold territory? I also had the opportunity to collaborate with well-known paper maker Georgia Deal this year. I have always thought that collaboration is where your ideas and your thoughts could find breath in someone else's hands. Georgia and I discussed the idea of women's clothing as a metaphor, reflecting ideas from the current political climate by making and printing on handmade paper and constructing it into clothing. Side note, as you know, there was a hurricane, and if you don't know, you need a lot of water to make paper, and we didn't have any. And when I mean we, I mean everyone in Asheville. That did not stop us, and that's another presentation. The piece we created is called Bruised and Betrayed, and I had the chance to accompany Georgia to Puerto Rico to Saudi Graphics Council International with this piece, where we spoke on a panel about the possibilities of paper and what could be done with it in collaboration. During this time, Georgia and I were asked by Tracy Morgan Gallery to create a piece for the curated exhibition Post-Diluvian this past January in Asheville. Inviting artists to exhibit work relating to the hurricane, the gallery was interested in us printing on an actual Tyvek suit. So we said yes, and quickly learned about printing on synthetic Tyvek, and despite some challenges, felt like we had success in creating the the tangle of vegetation and random found things throughout the area with gum transfer. The Isobar map on the interior was screen printed on deconstructed pattern pieces, and then I sewed them back together after printing was complete. And a shout out to Tatiana for letting us invade the printing studio. I love chance and hope that it always finds its way into whatever I'm creating. I'm led by process and material, and I try to allow pieces to grow out of me and give me a vocabulary for what I'm creating. The past 4 semesters have given me so many opportunities. Not once has this department ever said, stay in your lane, or you cannot do that. It's always yes and. This is not only from faculty and staff, but from, God damn it, my beloved cohort. A group of individuals that I'm not only grateful for, but who deeply trust and have my back. Who always come up with a way, whatever is asked of them. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and I'm continually inspired by you. I would like to leave you with a quote from Francis Bacon. The creative process is a cocktail of instinct and skill, culture, and highly creative feverishness. It's not like a drug. It's a particular state when everything happens very quickly. A mixture of consciousness and unconsciousness, of fear and pleasure. It's a little like making love, the physical act of making love. Thank you. It's my deep pleasure to introduce Reese
Hello everyone, my name is Reese and I am the owner and creator of Clown Town. Today we are going to go through and meet some of the characters that are currently within our amusement park. Can you go to the next slide please? But of course with an amusement park there's always fun. So hidden within this presentation here, there is 3 tickets. So if you see them, shout out bingo. And then at the end, come see me after the questions and I will give you a prize. So we're gonna start out by talking about the first ever creature to come to Clown Town, and that is Lace. One second. Okay, so unfortunately, Lace has been executed. I promise you, it was humanely. Do not worry. Go to the next. Oh, shit. Don't worry about that. All right, so now this is Sammy. Sammy is one of our lovely creatures here. As you can see, that balloon is attached to its neck, and yes, it is natural, I promise. We can go to the next slide, thank you. So this is a little bit about Sammy, feel free to read that. I'm gonna talk about Sammy's story a little bit. So Sammy is very much overworked and just needs a break. So Sammy tells that story of feeling like you have that expectation to go to work, but not wanting to, and just feeling like that work is just pointing a gun at your head to get out of bed, even if you're sick. So yeah, that's Sammy, everyone. Next is Sammy's husband, Giggles. Giggles is our pride and joy at Clown Town. We can go to the next slide. Get that.
Bingo!
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. From Sammy at the end. We got a beautiful photo of Giggles up there. Giggles is a little shy. Giggles has a lot of anxiety built up within him. And that's due to the fact that his first performance didn't go so well. So he's a little scared of everybody. So if you ever see Giggles, just make sure to just say, it's okay. You're fine. You'll be okay. You'll do better. Next up we have Hoosier, and I'm so sorry. So unfortunately, we can go to the next slide actually. Let's get closer up there. So unfortunately, Hoosier did experience a little accident, a little run-in with Sammy. I promise you, Hoosier is fine. Their ear is just a little painful. Yes?
So, I heard it wasn't an accident. I heard Sammy ate Hoosier's ear. Is that true?
Let's go to the next one. All right, we got Pandemonium featuring, let's go to the next slide. You can see that beautiful name, Twizzy and Blonde Thunderpants, aka Twiz. Twiz is probably one of our biggest ones to date that we've shown so far, other than Sammy. But Twiz usually likes to hide out in his tent and stay away from everybody, and it's not because the rats are trapping him in there. It's totally not because of that. It's just because he wants to be in there. I promise you, he wants to be in there. Next we got the dynamic sibling duo, Thrash and Dash. We're gonna start with Thrash first. Thrash is perfectly safe to see because they're in the box for your safety, not theirs, your safety. Thrash does have a little bit of an appetite for human flesh. We don't know why. He just came to us like that. But we'll go to his sister next, who is a little more mellowed out. She's a little afraid of Thrash because of this, but she's very supportive of her brother, and that's why she stays in the box too. That brings us to Goose Amongst the Gaggle, and we've got a trio of performers here. So we'll start out with Manny. He is now the biggest one after Twiz. He is a lovely little being who just wants to swim all day. But unfortunately, his roommates don't get along too much well with him, so we'll move to Grapes now. Grapes is very much jealous that Lemonade has gotten like a little hyperfixated on Manny and his existence. But he's a loving, loving husband to Lemonade. Unfortunately, Lemonade is a little bit preoccupied. Go ahead.
Bingo.
Perfect. Thank you. I don't really want to talk about Lemonade too much because she's kind of a no. She's a lovely duck. So now that you've all put up with my shenanigans, I'm going to give you a sneak peek at 2 of the upcoming attractions for Clown Town. Let's go. This is Winnie. She will be shown at Final Critique, so if you're there, you should totally check her out. And Oatmeal and Sock. Oatmeal's the cat, Sock is the socks, the tarantula with socks on. Alright, and then I will open it up for questions. Yes.
Did the frogs win?
Yes, next question. Yes. All right, let's move to the thank yous. Here's our thank you. Who said that first? You got it, okay. So, thank you for to our sponsors. We got my wife, my mom, Larissa, who's my sister, Heather May, thank you for putting up with my shenanigans too. Susan, Tom, thank you. The MFA cohort, I love you guys so much. Like, every time I look at the Discord and I see that we've had chats, and I'm like, I get to talk to my friends. And then all the faculty, and of course, the producer. Thank you.
Thank you all. Oh, hey.
I'm here and have been engaged. I'm Ruby.
It's like we did your presentation.
Oh, did mine already?
Yeah, but if you want to answer
Does
questions.
anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Hi, Elijah.
Hi. I'm good. I can stay for like 3 minutes. Does anyone have any questions?
In your presentation, you talked briefly about two separate selves.
Yeah.
Do you find that they ever converge, or are they always very separate?
So right now, the process is kind of keeping them separate from one another. I'm entirely open to the possibility that they may eventually converge when I kind of like know my shit together. Right now, I think it's much more helpful to kind of have two completely separate brains and not let them talk to one another, because then I'm just gonna do, you know, one piece every year. Be like, it was both of us converging and working with each other, and it's collaborative, and it's just me eating mac and cheese and watching The Office all day.
Do they come into conflict with each other, or do they just live in completely separate universes?
So they live in completely separate universes. The conflict was when they were together. I was trying to tell two sides of one story, and it just made sense to just have them completely separate and be like, these are two arguments, rather than trying to make them sound the same thing.
And which one of them likes the marble in the mix?
Elijah. Yeah, Sansoy's not fun enough for that. She's the one that's been watching slasher movies all weekend.
Did she make the styrofoam head with the wig that you showed on studio?
Yeah. If it looks like that person has a problem, that's her.
Okay, thank you all very much.